It happened. A good race at Paul Ricard. Let's just savour this. Miracles really do happen. My name's Aaron, and welcome to the 5 Red Lights.
One light, two lights, three lights, four lights, five lights, and it's go, 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 go!
So the battle was just as close as we expected it to be at the front of the grid on race day. Max Verstappen took a commanding pole position by a quarter of a second, which was kind of surprising because Mercedes were expected to have the upper hand on Saturday. But I think they probably had the faster car on the Sunday. That being said, both cars were very evenly matched and track position was key, and also so was strategy. Red Bull getting some payback this time with the strategy because they were the ones who pulled the undercut and pulled the two-stopper against Mercedes, who stayed out on the one-stop. Red Bull made sure of that win because they had the opportunity to sandwich Mercedes, with Sergio going much longer than anyone expected the tyres to go. And of course, Sergio is the tyre whisperer of Formula One, and probably shouldn't have been a shock to anyone that he made them last more than anyone else. The long corners generally being front tyre killers, but Sergio just generally has that feel, doesn't he? He's just so good at it. And it gave Red Bull the best of both worlds because they had Max, who they could almost go full out attack with, use up the tyres, run the strategy from the front, and that was even despite him making, I'd say, a big error at turn 1 because the track was green, having been washed because of all the rain in the morning, and he went in, he was under no pressure, and had he had Lewis up his inside, I'd have kind of understood that error. But it was a funny error because he went in and he just didn't have any grip. And you can make the excuse of, oh, it's high fuel and it's the start of the race. He was there at the front on his own. So for me, he should have been through that corner without falling off the track. And he let Lewis get through, but kind of actually worked for him because it allowed him to be in position to undercut the Mercedes, and Mercedes kind of brought this on themselves because they pitted Bottas first, and they tried to drive the strategy, and Red Bull all of a sudden could see how valuable the undercut was, and it had been seen already because Charles Leclerc, who'd been munching through his tyres, had pitted early and ended up back in front of Ricciardo and even ahead of his teammate, who was way in front of him. So the Mercedes team could see what was happening on the track, and really you have to read the race. This is where Mercedes fell down initially for me. They didn't read what was going on. They didn't look at what was actually happening. They looked at what the computer was telling them. They thought they had enough of a buffer to protect themselves, but they didn't, because you could see that from what was happening on the track. The track was green and it was offering not much durability, so a new tyre was going to be massively quicker than an old tyre. So Max, in essence, made the mistake, but then it allowed him to create this opportunity with the undercut, and then again with the two-stop strategy. Red Bull sandwiched Mercedes, caught them out, and made them look a bit silly, to be honest. Should Mercedes have stopped again? That is the big question. Now, it's easy to say yes because obviously they failed to win the race, but they did get incredibly close to winning it with Lewis, and how he made the tyres last that long is incredible. And to be honest, with 5 laps to go, I thought he had it in the bag. He had a 5-second lead, but then Max just turned it up and he arrived and bam, that was it. Nigel Mansell always said, when you arrive behind someone you're trying to overtake, you have to attack immediately. Don't settle down, don't size them up, just go for it. And Max did that. Lewis had nothing left to defend with. Had Max taken his time, it might have been a different outcome. Really, what did undo Mercedes critically was their attempted undercut on Verstappen. If they'd pitted Hamilton first, they would never have run into this situation. Well, initially, they wouldn't have been undercut in the first place. They might have had the opportunity to box out of the lead and pass Perez and then go after Verstappen. They could have cornered Red Bull themselves. But they didn't. They went with Bottas because they tried to put the pressure on Verstappen, and in the end it backfired. I can see their logic, but you've got to maintain track position. You've got to look at what the race is telling you, and really kind of disappointed in Mercedes for that. You've got to look at what the game is telling you to do. And it told you that the undercut was super powerful on that day in history. Mercedes got themselves caught out. In hindsight, they should really have stopped both cars on the lap that Valtteri came in. And maybe that would have allowed them to drive the strategy by maintaining the lead. But, double stacked pit stops are risky, and Mercedes haven't had a perfect record this season, so you could perhaps forgive them for that. But at least bring Hamilton in on the very next lap, which they didn't. They left him out another lap, and it left him exposed. It cost him track position and eventually the race. Deserved win, though, it was for Red Bull and for Max, so you can't take that away from him. He extends his championship lead. It's 3 wins in a row for Red Bull, which hasn't happened since 2013. And Max is on a roll as Red Bull head to home territory in Austria. McLaren had a fantastic weekend. They ended up as the 3rd highest scoring team in the race. They finished 5th and 6th from 8th and 10th on the grid, which is a fantastic recovery, but they haven't really had the fastest car of the midfield in qualifying. Ferrari have actually out-qualified them at every single race. McLaren have done better extracting the most out of their race days. They've actually beaten Ferrari 4-3 on a Sunday. But it was actually Daniel Ricciardo making the running early on, which was surprising given Lando Norris's form this season. Daniel actually pulling a stunning move at the first corner from the start on his teammate. And he said actually afterwards he'd been boxed in the middle of the track at the starts in previous races at Paul Ricard. So this time he made sure to get himself out of that situation, down the inside or on the outside. He went for the outside and it paid dividends. Got himself ahead of his teammate. And he made some super late braking moves into the chicane. And we've been hearing bits and bobs about where and why Daniel is struggling. And it's come down to the brakes. And this was the same with the Renault. He has a bit of a sensitivity to the brake pedal. And obviously it's so important to how he goes racing and how he tries to attack his opponents. But he seemed to be getting on top of that, a good balance with the car. And also the McLaren just looked after its tyres better. And that is just such an important trait. We saw how it can undo you with Mercedes in Monaco and in Baku, where they couldn't generate the tyre temperature. And I think McLaren might have suffered with that a little bit, but not to the extent that Mercedes did. But in Paul Ricard, in France, they were on the money because the track was green and it needed a car that looked after its tyres. Lando was hanging on to Daniel's coattails early on, and Ricciardo in the end had to move aside because Lando picked up his pace after the restart. It was a really nice battle though to see Alonso defending against the two McLarens. In the end he was undone because his tyres were falling apart, but it was a really nice battle. Daniel with the late braking move into the chicane and Lando with a stunning move into the long right-hander, which I actually forget the name of because I'm not familiar with the Castellet circuit. Given it's not given us much good racing over the years, there's not been that much point in looking at it. So from there, McLaren just steamrolled the midfield really. Lando was off in a class of his own, and Daniel held on to that 6th place. He was fending off Gasly and Alonso towards the end, but more excellent points, confidence building performance for Daniel, and Lando is just on fire, isn't he? He is just flying in the form of his life. if you put him in a Mercedes or a Red Bull at the moment, I think he would probably win you a Grand Prix. Also, a nice touch, which you can see in some of the pictures that I've got scrolling through, is the tribute to Mansour OJ on the side of the McLaren, remembering him and his influence on the Woking based team. So let's have a look at the rest of the field. Aston Martin, they played the long game again, and their drivers ran long using the hard tyres, and they used them as if they'd paid for them themselves. They really didn't want to come in and pit, did they? They ran extremely long. Vettel ran almost 40 laps, and they picked up a 9th and 10th place finish for the team, Sebastian Vettel and Lance Stroll. Having started from 12th and 19th, which isn't bad reward for running the opposite strategy, making a one-stop work, and beating several of their midfield rivals. AlphaTauri, they had a decent weekend, qualified in 6th place with Pierre Gasly, while Yuki Tsunoda had another mishap in qualifying. You just wonder how long this can continue for Yuki. Pierre picked up 7th place for AlphaTauri as the McLarens came through and overtook him, and Yuki could only reach 13th, having started from the pit lane after his quali shunt. Alpine, on home soil, they did pick up some points with Fernando Alonso, who dragged the car into Q3, then ran with the top of the midfield for much of the race, and picked up an 8th place finish behind Pierre Gasly and Daniel Ricciardo. Of course, he was chasing them to the line on the final lap. While Esteban Ocon had a bit of an anonymous race, coming home only in 14th place on a disappointing day for him, although he will be buoyed by the confidence of that 3-year contract extension with the Alpine team. So that secures his future going forward. Will his teammate be Fernando Alonso? I don't think it will be. I think it will be Pierre Gasly and a French sort of super team vibe. But we'll wait and see. Fernando is getting it together, and he might stick around for 2022 and even beyond. I mean, will Fernando be racing when he's 50? It's possible. Ferrari, well, the prancing horse stumbled, didn't it? Starting 5th and 7th, they dropped to 11th and 16th on a hideous day for the Scuderia. They had horrendous tyre wear, and they actually caught out Sainz with the undercut of their own car of Leclerc, and it kind of just put everything into perspective for Ferrari on the day. They weren't quick enough. They ate through their tyres, and they got absolutely nothing out of the race. Williams, it was a good day for them, the polar opposite of Ferrari, because even though it's only 12th place, and 12th place isn't where Williams really want to be, it's an important 12th place because it jumps them back ahead of Haas in the Constructors' Championship. George Russell with one of his best drives of the season, securing their best result, and on a day where 20 of 20 starters finished the race, George can count himself unlucky not to have collected a point, because on another day, a race of attrition with a collision or a few retirements, just mechanical failures, or don't say it, a tyre blowout. You know, George could have been looking at some points, but it wasn't to be on this day, and they do miss out on that elusive point at Williams. It was a tough day also for Alfa Romeo and Haas, as their pair of drivers came home 15th and 17th for Antonio Giovinazzi and Kimi Raikkonen, while the Haas boys brought up the rear in 19th and 20th. Mazepin did put a forceful move on Mick Schumacher, which is fine. I'm all for that. But how much will it gain him or the team in the bigger picture? It's just really for his ego, wasn't it? So that's the end of my French Grand Prix recap. As always, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like on the video. Subscribe if you're new around here, and check out some of my other content. I've got some Drive Crate unboxings. I actually received my latest box this week, so that will be up on the channel very soon. Keep your eyes peeled for that. Stay tuned for my predictions for the Austrian Grand Prix weekend, which will be coming out on Friday. If you're watching this, it will be tomorrow, hopefully tomorrow. So this will come out on the Thursday. Predictions on Friday. hopefully the drive crate unboxing over the weekend of the Austrian Grand Prix. And I will leave you with this question, which I would like your answer to in the comment section down below. Are Red Bull the team to beat in Austria? That is all for today. My name's Aaron. This has been the 5 Red Lights, and when the 5 Red Lights go out in Austria, I will see you next time. Bye for now.